رسول سلام عليك.
بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Who remembers what we spoke about last week?
Before the war,
Did we start the Battle of Badr yet?
No, before it.
So it was right before the Battle of Badr.
No, you started it like with the 3 people that fought.
Ahsan. So we started talking about the Mubaraza and how 3 people from the Quraysh came out and 3 people from the Muslims came out and they fought. And who won?
Muslims.
The 3 people from the Muslims. Even though the army of the Muslims was small or big?
Big.
The Muslims. Small. Does anybody remember the size of the army? 300. What was the size of the army of the people of Quraysh? 1,000, yeah. Who had the most armor in their army? The most armor in terms of, like the helmets and the chest? No, which army? Which army? The Muslims or the Kuffar? Kuffar, yeah. So who was ready more for the battle? The Kuffar, yeah. So the night before we talked about how everyone went to sleep in the Muslim camp, and this was a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, except for who?
The Prophet.
Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He was up all night making dua. And when Abu Bakr saw him and he started to cry and he says, "O Prophet of Allah, you're making all this dua, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised you victory." And then as soon as our Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam put his hands down, he says, "Rejoice and be happy, O Abu Bakr, for indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told me what?" No, he told him something. What did he tell him? Ahsant, Jibreel alayhi salam was putting on his turban and he was readying his armor and he is on his horse. And
Why do you have to put a turban?
Because this is just to say that he's putting on his war attire, his war clothing, his war armor. And at that time, putting on a war turban is just to show that they are being ready for war. And he was leading 1,000 angels coming to aid and help the Muslims. Were they coming to fight instead of the Muslims? Or helping the Muslims? In other words, do the Muslims just have to stand still and do nothing? No. Now think about it. Think about it. Can Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala send one angel to take care of the kuffar? Yeah. Why did he not do that? He wants to teach the Muslims that you also have to do your part. If Allah wants to support you, He could, but He wants you to do your part by preparing and exercising and attacking in the war. Now,
But if he sended 1,000 angels, they would be like a fair fight. But if 1,000 to 1,000.
the angels are so strong, it will not be a fair fight. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted them to participate like the Muslims in the actual battle, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So after the Mubaraza, the battle started. And we have a few stories, bits and pieces that we know about the Battle of Badr, and these are the few things that I want to talk to you about today. So, as we mentioned, as soon as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam finished his dua, he was told and informed that Jibreel alayhi salam was getting ready with 1,000 angels. And these 1,000 angels came to help the Muslims in the battle. And they were actually helping them in the actual battle. And we get this from some of the Sahaba. They told us and narrated to us some of the things that they witnessed in the battle. So for example, one of the Sahaba was chasing one of the kuffar, and he got all the way to him and he raised his sword and he was about to come down and hit him with the sword, and he noticed that he already got hit with the sword. He already got injured on his face before he even hit him. And that was because there was an angel that was there, and that Sahabi told his son, and that's how we know the story. The son was relaying the story, and he says, "My father told me that he was chasing a mushrik from the people of Quraysh, and he raised his sword, and before he was coming down, he got hit by the sword before I even hit him with the sword. Another story, one Sahabi was chasing a person from Quraysh, and he heard in front of him an angel talking to his horse, and he would say, "Go forth, Hayzum." His horse, his name was Hayzum, and he was telling his horse, "Go forth, Hayzum," and he was using a whip. Does anybody know what a whip is?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like a long, flexible, maybe made out of leather, and they whip it. And before he hit the person from Quraysh, this angel whipped his whip, and it hit the mushrik on the nose, and it cut his nose off.
Wow.
Yeah, so the angels were actually fighting in the battle. And the Sahaba actually witnessed the fighting. Not only were they fighting with their swords and coming and hitting and attacking, but Al-Abbas, does anybody know who Al-Abbas is? Al-Abbas.
Is it angel?
No, Al-Abbas at the time he was fighting on the side of the mushrikeen. But he was also the
Leader
uncle
of the Prophet.
of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And at the end of the battle he was caught, he was a prisoner of war. And the Sahabi that caught him, so Al-Abbas, he was a big guy, very strong guy. In your opinion, when a big guy, for a person to catch a big guy, does he have to be a big, strong man, or can he also be a small, scrawny person? Can a small, scrawny person catch a big man?
Yeah.
No. It's very hard. If two people are wrestling, can a small person wrestle a really big man?
But you have to be smart.
We see in today's wrestling, they put people in the same weight class. A big guy cannot wrestle a small guy. Why? Because when you're bigger, that's not fair. Yeah, because the bigger person will always have the advantage over the smaller person. Can I wrestle you?
No.
Would you win? So think about it. Can a small person wrestle and beat a big person?
Yes.
Normally speaking, can they? No, they cannot.
But they
So, Al-Abbas was being brought into the camp of the Muslims. And he's a big, strong guy, and he was being caught and led by what? Can you guess by who? A small person. A person from the Ansar. He was short, he was small, he was scrawny, and he was leading him, and the people were looking, they were thinking, you caught him? And even Al-Abbas, he was looking, and he was saying, who caught me? This is not who caught me. And the man was saying, no, I'm the one who caught you. And he was like, no, you didn't catch me. Until they went to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Didn't the angel that caught him?
Yes, now we're going to hear it. And Al-Abbas was saying, no, this man didn't catch me. And the small Sahabi was saying, no, I caught him. And Al-Abbas was saying, no, the person that caught me, he was big, and his hair was split, and he had a black horse, and he was very handsome. Where is this man? He is the one that caught me. And the Sahabi was saying, no, I'm the one that caught him. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told the Sahabi, just be quiet, because you were helped by a mighty, noble angel. It wasn't just you that caught the strong man, but rather there was an angel that helped you. So the angels, not only were they helping in the fighting, but they were also helping in the catching of the people of Quraysh when the battle was over.
They were all released though.
And we will talk about that later. Don't ruin it for everybody else. But you are right. But there's a little more detail than that. Inshallah, we will get to it. So, there was another story that I wanted to mention during the battle of Badr. Who knows the name Abu Jahl? Who is Abu Jahl? No, not the bad uncle. That is Abu Lahab. Abu Jahl is one of the chieftains of Quraysh, and he was a very evil, bad man. He tortured the people, and he hurt the people, and he was very, very, very evil and mean towards who?
What does herd mean?
Nah? What is?
What does herd mean?
Like back mean to the people, like you torture them.
Mean to the people.
Herd?
He hurt the people. So he injured and he damaged and maybe he hurt the Muslims. So he was one of the very, very evil people in Mecca. So the story goes like this. Abdurrahman ibn Auf, and he is one of the Muhajirun, one of the Sahaba that migrated from Mecca to Medina. Aisha, he migrated from where to where? Mecca to Medina. طيب? And he was in battle. So imagine anybody in battle, who do you want to have next to you? Weak people or strong people? Strong people. That way, if you get in trouble or if you need help, can they help you? Yeah. So Abdurrahman ibn Auf, he was saying, I was fighting and I wanted to make sure that there were strong people with me. So I looked to my right and I looked to my left, and all I found was two young men, and they were maybe 16 or 17 years old. Mu'adh and Mu'awwidh. They were very young, and I started to feel like, oh, they're young. How can they help me? He wasn't very happy. And then all of a sudden, while they were fighting, one of them came and whispered in his ear, and he said, "Oh, uncle, do you know how Abu Jahl looks like?" He said, "Yeah, I know how he looks like." He said, "Because I heard that he was very mean and very aggressive, and he hurt the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I took an oath by Allah that if I see him, I will charge at him and I will fight him until he either dies or I die. Meaning, I will do my best to finish off Abu Jahl." So Abdurrahman ibn Auf suddenly felt a little bit of, okay, this man is very enthusiastic and he really very confident and he wanted to fight. And then all of a sudden, who came from the other side? The other Sahabi, the other young Sahabi. Right? There was Mu'adh and Mu'awwidh. So the other Sahabi came and he whispered in Abdurrahman ibn Auf's ear the same thing. Do you know how he looks like? Because I took an oath that if I see him and I wanted to kill him, and it turns out those two young men were friends. And they had a competition. And their competition was, who will kill Abu Jahl? Because Abu Jahl was mean to their Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he hurt him and he was mean to the Sahaba as well. So now Abdurrahman ibn Auf thought to himself, okay, if I'm surrounded by these two young men, it means if I need help, they will help me. These are very strong, confident men. If they wanted to fight a giant and a strong leader like Abu Jahl, it means that they are very strong themselves. So he told them, you know what, if I see him, I will point him out to you. And they started continuing the battle, and all of a sudden Abdurrahman ibn Auf sees in a distance Abu Jahl, surrounded by his entourage, surrounded by fighters and guards, including his son, Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl. As soon as he saw him, he told the boys, he said, "O young men, the companion, the man that you are looking for, he's right over there." And before he finished his sentence, what do you think these two young men did? They rushed towards Abu Jahl and they were racing because both of them wanted to get there first. Why? Because it's a competition for them. They wanted to see who can get to Abu Jahl first. So they ran and they were running so fast. So one of them wanted to beat the other person, so he jumped and he lunged towards Abu Jahl, and Abu Jahl was caught off by surprise, and he wanted to hit Abu Jahl with the sword, but because he lunged and he was far, so he was only able to hit his leg, and he cut his leg off. And we don't feel bad for Abu Jahl because he was a very evil, vile, bad man. No, Mu'adh cut off Abu Jahl's leg. Because fighting in the battle is not as easy as we think. He needs to, what if the people attack him? He needs to be able to defend himself. In fact, when he jumped and he cut off Abu Jahl's leg, Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl, the son of Abu Jahl, right away he lunged and he hit Mu'adh's arm and he cut off his arm. And Mu'adh, the Muslim, for the rest of his life, lived without an arm. But that's okay. Do you think Mu'adh was upset and he started to cry? No, he was a fighter. He was a fierce battleman. He kept fighting and he lived all the way until the time of Uthman radiallahu anhu, and he lived a long time. Mu'awwidh,
Which arm was cut, the right or the foot?
Always left.
the arm that he was fighting with, because this is the arm that he was extending, so this is the arm that was cut off. And at the same time, Mu'awwidh, his companion, came and he hit Abu Jahl in the chest. And then the guards came and they started to fight them both until they pushed them back. And then they retreated Mu'adh and Mu'awwidh. And they went back to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And they were both very, very excited. And they were saying, no, I killed him, no, I killed him, no, I killed him. Because both of them wanted to take the honor having killed this bad man that hurt and punished the Muslims. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, let me see both your swords. So he looked at both of their swords and he said, both of you killed him.
What do you mean how?
Because they both contributed and they both hit him.
Wait, what happened to the other one?
The other one was not hurt, however, during the rest of the battle, he was martyred and he passed away and returned back to Allah. So Mu'adh stayed alive with no arm, but Mu'awwidh passed away in the battle. But he died later on in the same battle. But at that moment he
Who
still...
killed him?
Habibi, I don't know. He just died in the battle. But right now, both of them came to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and they were both very proud. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam told them both that they both killed Abu Jahl. Yeah, and it is a reason to celebrate for the Muslims because he was a man that caused a lot of hurt, and a lot of evil. He was the source of a lot of evil to the Muslims.
So you got stabbed. Oh,
I know that.
you got stabbed.
Yeah.
He didn't get stabbed.
طيب.
Yeah, it doesn't.
طيب, another story that I wanted to mention that happened in the battle of Badr. Does anybody know who Bilal ibn Rabah is? Hands up. Who knows Bilal ibn Rabah? He was being tortured in Mecca, right?
Yeah.
Does anybody remember how he was tortured in Mecca?
From Abu Jahl.
No, from Ubay ibn Khalaf. Ubay ibn Khalaf. He was
His son is Sufyan.
he was the evil man who was torturing Bilal ibn Rabah. He would take him into the desert. He would put Bilal ibn Rabah on his back on the hot pebbles, and he would put a large rock on his chest, and he would torture him and punish him like that.
But he went desert.
So in the battle, now,
Can I tell this first? He killed him. He killed.
and we will get to it. We will get to it. Yeah. Are we paying attention?
Yeah.
So in the battle, when the Muslims won and the people of Quraysh began to retreat, Ubay ibn Khalaf was a big fat man. So he couldn't run away. So you know what he did? He found one of the Muslims and he said, oh, you. And it was Abdurrahman ibn Auf. And they were friends before Islam. So he said, take me as a prisoner. And you can take my armor and you can take my swords. Take me as a prisoner. So Abdurrahman ibn Auf said, okay, I'll take you as a prisoner. And here, so he went and he's not fighting with him to take him as a prisoner. So Ubay ibn Khalaf submitted willingly. He said, just take me as a prisoner. And Abdurrahman ibn Auf took him.
his name is Umayyah.
His name is Ubay ibn Khalaf. So he was guiding him. Here, you know what? We'll confirm quickly. We'll confirm very quickly because you asked, and now you are making me not sure about his name. His name was.
I think Umayyah because
His name was. Ahsant, Umayyah ibn Khalaf. My mistake. What was his name? Not Ubay. His name was Umayyah ibn Khalaf. Barakallah feek. Ahsant. Jazakallah khair. طيب. So Abdurrahman ibn Auf was walking, not Ubay ibn Khalaf, ibn Khalaf, but Umayyah ibn Khalaf. He was walking him back to the camp of the Muslims. And who sees him? Bilal ibn Rabah. And Bilal ibn Rabah says, Umayyah ibn Khalaf, the chieftain of the kuffar, if he stays alive, I'm not going to stay alive. And Abdurrahman ibn Auf says, Bilal, he is my prisoner of war. You can't fight him. You can't kill him. And Bilal says, no. If he is staying alive, I won't stay alive. Either I die or he dies. And Abdurrahman ibn Auf says, oh Bilal, he's my prisoner. Calm down. So Bilal goes to some of the Ansar, some of the people that were from Medina. And he said, come. And he brought them quickly. And he said, do you see that man? That is Umayyah ibn Khalaf. Do you know what he used to do to me? He used to do this to me, and he used to do this to me, and he used to do this to me. And the people of the Ansar, they got really heated. Can you imagine? We know the story of Bilal ibn Rabah.
Yes.
even the Muslims in Medina knew the story of Bilal ibn Rabah because he shared his story. So these Ansar from Medina, they took out their swords and they went to Abdurrahman ibn Auf and they said, hand him over to us. And Abdurrahman ibn Auf kept saying, no, he's my prisoner, you can't do this. And they said, no, he tortured Bilal ibn Rabah, he is not safe, we're going to kill him here today. So Abdurrahman ibn Auf tried to protect Umayyah ibn Khalaf, but the Ansar took out their swords and they began to hit him and stab him until they killed him. Because he punished and he hurt and he tortured Bilal ibn Rabah and he did not deserve to live. So an evil man, just like Abu Jahl, met an evil end in the battle of Badr. In fact, a lot of the chieftains and the leaders of Quraysh met their end and they died during the battle.
Did Abu Lahab die?
Not Abu Lahab. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if you guys remember, there was an incident when he was making sujood and a group of the kuffar brought the entrails and the intestines and the stomach on top of his head when he was praying. Do we remember that story?
Yeah.
Right? And his daughter came and she was crying and she removed the entrails meaning the insides of the animal, and she was crying. Now? Like a cow that was slaughtered. And when the Prophet ﷺ finished and he looked and he found the leaders of the Quraysh and he made dua against those leaders, all of those leaders died in the battle of Badr. So it was a battle that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took care of the majority of the leaders of Quraysh.
So the Prophet was a Muslim, right?
Now?
So if a Muslim
So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had dhulm being done upon him, and his dua is accepted.
So that's why they'll die, right?
Ahsan. So the battle ended, and from the people of Quraysh, 70 of them died. They were killed, and around 70 people were captured as prisoners of war. Yeah, because the rest escaped to Mecca. From the side of the Muslims, how many people were captured, do you think?
14.
No, 14 were killed.
0.
Ahsan, 14 only were killed. How many people were captured?
0.
0 people were captured. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave victory to the Muslims and to His Prophet. Did He not promise His Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam victory?
Yes.
And did He give him victory?
Yeah.
Yes, He gave him victory. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, we're almost done here, decided to stay in Badr for 3 days. For a number of reasons. One, so that they can bury the Muslims, the shuhada, the martyrs, and give them a proper burial. And they buried the kuffar all in one grave. In fact, they put them in one of the wells and then they closed off the well. The second reason they wanted to stay for 3 days is so that they can recover. After a battle, the people are tired, the people are injured, so that they can recover, heal a little bit before they go back to Medina. And the third reason is they wanted the people in the area to know that, you know what? The kuffar, the people of Quraysh lost, and the Muslims won by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this was the battle of Badr. Does anybody have any questions before we finish today?
No, is 70 plus 70 154?
No, 70 plus 70. That's a math question.
1,400.
No, my.
No.
140.
Ahsan, 140. The rest of the 1,000, where did they go? Back to Mecca. They retreated back to Mecca. Are we done? Any more questions?